And you'd see everybody waiting to see him, right? And I'd be waiting there too. And they'd all scream when he came on the screen. So we thought, that's a good job.
I'd never heard anything like it. Heartbreak Hotel, Heartburn Motel, as Elvis called it.
And black people have been going out shaking their behind for centuries. And what the hell's unusual about that shaking the hips and stuff? And that's all Elvis was doing, was copying that.
I mean, it was Elvis. He just looked like Elvis.
It was the king, wasn't it? It was Elvis.
This is Mr. Hips, you know. Hip swiveling man.
It was a night. Ooh, what a night it was. It really was such a night.
Take a bad song and make it better. Remember to let it into your heart. Then you can start to make it better.
I would like to think that I had improved as an entertainer. And I like to get the rapport with an audience, because it's a give and take thing. If you can do that, it works.
Elvis Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, was known for his larger-than-life persona, electrifying stage presence, and an unmistakable voice that shaped generations of musicians.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there and they began to wail.
But beyond the rhinestone-studded jumpsuits and the curled lip was a man with strong opinions on what made great music.
See, at first he was playing more like rockabilly. He wasn't really getting into the things that he started to do later. But when he started to do that, then he started to turn heads, including mine.
Presley was fiercely protective of emotional authenticity in performance, often dismissing artists he felt were technically proficient but lacked true feeling. His aversion to what he termed all technique and no emotional feeling placed several well-regarded musicians firmly in his disfavor. One such figure was Mel Torme, a jazz crooner with a velvet voice and impeccable phrasing.
I'm pressing on, baby, now. Oh, hear me holler and hear me roar. Gonna be with you ever.
To most, Torme was a musical craftsman, admired for his smooth vocals and intricate arrangements. To Presley, however, he was emblematic of style over substance. Similarly, Robert Goulet, known for his polished performances in musicals and crooning ballads, was another artist who drew Elvis's ire.
On a clear day, rise and look around you.
Presley's disapproval was no mild matter. According to Priscilla Presley in her memoir Elvis and Me, her husband would react with violent frustration when either singer appeared on television. If someone he didn't like came on, he'd just shoot the TV. That was it. He had a magnum by his side, and if he didn't like what he saw, the television was gone, Priscilla recalled. Goulet himself later commented on the bizarre habit with bemusement, saying, "It wasn't personal. He did the same thing when Sinatra was on." Nevertheless, the act became one of the many legendary eccentricities of Presley's later years. Another major figure in music history to have a complicated relationship with Elvis was John Lennon.
Above us on the sky. Imagine all the people.
The Beatle had once idolized Presley, describing him as the catalyst for his own musical career. Before Elvis, there was nothing, Lennon famously said. But their long-awaited meeting in 1965 at Presley's Bel Air mansion was far from the inspiring encounter Lennon had imagined.
We were asking him about this, just making movies and, not doing any personal appearances or TV. And he seems to enjoy it. I think he enjoys making movies so much. Because we couldn't stand not doing personal appearances, We'd get bored quickly.
Instead, he found a man whom he perceived as detached, politically conservative, and ultimately disappointing.
All these gang, the Memphis Mafia, whatever they call them, all those guys.
Well, he just was surrounded by these sycophants. I'm going to go to the loo now. Okay, we'll all go to the loo with you. It was just so strange, and I was just so angry because he wasn't making any music. He was not doing what he should have been doing.
Years later, Lennon was scathing in his assessment of his former hero, branding him a right-wing Southern bigot. It was a damning indictment from an artist who had spent much of his later career advocating for progressive social change. Their clash was emblematic of the shifting tides in music and culture. Presley, the symbol of 1950s rebellion, was now seen as part of the establishment Lennon sought to dismantle. Frank Sinatra, the old guard of American pop, was another artist who found himself in opposition to Presley.
I thought of quitting, baby, but my heart just won't buy it. And if I didn't think it was worth a single try.
In the late 1950s, when rock and roll was beginning to overtake the big band and crooning styles of the previous generation, Sinatra dismissed the genre outright. Rock and roll is sung, played, and written for the most part by cretinous goons, he declared, a not-so-subtle jab at figures like Presley, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard. Despite this, in a carefully staged public reconciliation, Presley and Sinatra appeared together on the Frank Sinatra Timex show Welcome Home Elvis in 1960, following Presley's return from military service.
Elvis, I tell you something, it was great. It was great, and I'm glad to see the Army hasn't changed it. Wasn't it great?
That's the first time I ever heard a woman screaming at a male singer.
The pair exchanged songs, with Elvis taking on Sinatra's Witchcraft and Sinatra performing Presley's Love Me Tender. The performance was smooth, but their personal relationship remained tepid at best.
You do Witchcraft, okay, and I'll do one of the other ones. Okay, Nelson?
While artistic differences were one thing, Presley's tensions with Jerry Lee Lewis were another matter altogether.
I like that look upon I thought it was funny. You came along and moved me, honey. I changed my mind. This love is fine.
In 1976, an intoxicated Lewis showed up at the gates of Graceland, armed and demanding to see Elvis. The meeting never took place. Presley, fearful for his safety, had Lewis arrested. Lewis later dismissed the incident, saying, "Hell, I wasn't going to hurt Elvis. I just wanted to see him." However, Presley was reportedly shaken by the ordeal, illustrating just how unpredictable his relationships with fellow musicians could be. Elvis Presley's musical dislikes and feuds were deeply rooted in his belief that music should be felt as much as heard. He was not a man who appreciated artifice or showmanship for its own sake. Whether it was Sinatra's distaste for rock and roll, Goulet's pristine delivery, or even Lennon's ideological turn against him, the king of rock and roll remained steadfast in his own convictions. His former guitarist Scotty Moore perhaps summed it up best. Elvis didn't care about technique, he cared about soul. If you didn't have it, he wasn't interested. For Presley, music was not a performance, it was an outpouring of spirit. And that, for better or worse, was the standard by which he judged those around him.